Season 3 is cooking. We are here on the Sopranos podcast for Season 3, Episode 3, Blackbird. Let this be a lesson to you. A man honors his debts. This quote was spoken by Johnny Boy Soprano to his 11-year-old son Tony in this episode, Season 3, Episode 3, of The Sopranos entitled Fortunate Son, written by Todd A. Kessler and directed by Henry J. Bronchtein. So, off the bat, this is, to me, guys, this episode feels like Season 3 kind of starting in earnest. Episode 1, we had that kind of interesting, oddball Mr. Ruggerio's Neighborhood, as we discussed, entertaining, but a little unusual, structured in the way they presented it. Episode 2 is the Livia is Dead episode. Nancy Marchand had passed away. They had to address it in the show. Not that it isn't important, but I feel like this episode kind of says, okay, Season 3, we're going now. Now, and this felt like a return to normalcy of sorts, although it's not a normal episode. It's a great episode. But it felt like a return to normalcy for the Sopranos universe. I'm Chris D'Amato.
I'm Paul Mancini.
And I'm Jordan Hugh.
And let's go around and talk about your first impressions.
I couldn't say it better, Chris. This actually feels like what would be, or perhaps should be, the first episode of a season. We are throwing such curveballs with the high concept Mr. Ruggerio's Neighborhood, and then the following up with of course, the passing of Nancy Marchand and the episode, the series response to that. This seems to be the starting point of a lot of plots that we're going to obviously follow up on through the season, and in discussing this episode, I think we're going to end up discussing it as if it's more of a premiere than anything else. There's just a lot that is started here or furthered in a significant way. And we're really starting to see who the focal points of this season are going to be. We're going to get Ralph Cifaretto writ large here. Jackie Jr. These things that are going to progress with us are now much more apparent in this episode, which is delivered with, is necessitated much more urgency than the first two episodes. There's a pace.
Yeah.
That's well said. I feel similarly, and I think one of the things that I love about this episode, getting into something new with Chris, I think Imperioli just does great work here, and
this is a great Imperioli episode.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. He and Paulie, some great scenes together. We'll get into those for sure. And it functions well as a story, as you guys said, really getting us into this world, and now we're seeing some of the trajectory here. It also works as a subgenre piece in a way about gangsterism, because for me anyway, just speaking for myself, leading up to this time, I liked mob stuff and crime movies and crime stories, but I didn't study much about it. So basically the concept of being, the mythos of being made in the mob, to me basically came from Goodfellas, which meant that you were untouchable. You were like a real gangster. But, of course, in Goodfellas it's a trick. And the character that kills Imperioli's character in Goodfellas gets shot in the face, which then paints how the characters perceive what's maybe happening here. But then to do an episode where a guy gets made and it sucks, and you're just a cog in a machine, is so interesting and ironic and of course funny at times, but gets into some real issues about these gangsters. I also just have to do a shout out. I went back and watched some scenes from Down Neck, which is the spiritual cousin to this episode. I have to say the production value here leaves it in the dust. The way that this is shot, the way that these flashbacks are put together, I don't know where they got this 11-year-old Tony, but the way that impressionability is painted on his face is really...
Great casting.
It's quite something. And
great kid.
Yeah, and it adds up to a great hour. And by the way, these Sopranos just take things off of people when they want them. I'm sure you guys noticed that. Just body part, yoink. Very odd, very funny in some ways, and dark. And it added up to a terrific hour. And the last scene is just a stunner. We're going to get there.
Yeah, it's quite something, this episode. I agree. And not to knock Down Neck, of course, but I'm sure the show at this point, it's the biggest thing of all time. I'm sure their budget was way jacked up so they could make those older scenes, give it a little bit more visual panache than even they had in previous. But there's a lot going on here. There are at least 5 or 6 individual story threads. Like you said, Jordan, this has a very premiere-ish feel, even though it's not the technical premiere, but it does kind of launch all of our stories into their trajectory for the rest of the season. We meet at least 3 new characters this episode we're going to talk about. So it's a good time. But I love the way the episode starts because you're immediately thrown into it. You're at home with Chris and Adriana. They're having a relaxing night. She's making them cheese dogs. And he looks like he's about to, probably relax, do some drugs, watch TV. And he gets the call. This is an interesting moment in the life of any gangster. I'm forgetting the name of his book, but I've mentioned the actual guy before. There's a mob guy who went to prison and got out of the mob. He didn't betray anybody or go into witness protection, but he just got out. He left. He was able to successfully leave the life. Name him Michael Franzese. He's got a great YouTube channel where he talks a lot about a lot of his experiences in the mob. His father was in the mob. And this fear you have on the day you're going to get made, where you're just kind of told, hey, get in a car, and you're not told where you're going. That's how they also kill you in the mob. You're just told, when somebody higher up than you says, hey, get in, you get in. 24 hours a day, you're on call. The family, Tony even says it during the making ceremony. This family comes first before everything. That's true. That is said. Everything in the making ceremony that they did has been described by people who have come out of the mob, and it seems like it's 100% accurate. The burning of the saint, the blood. But the point is, like, Chris being afraid is not unjustified, because you could be getting promoted or you could be getting murdered, and you just have to get in the car either way. But let's talk about this opening sequence. Chris finds out. Adriana's a little disappointed. Their night's ruined, but then she's excited for him. There's a sweetness to this scene where she's, it almost seems like a normal thing is happening. The couple is like, yeah, you're giving notice, he tells her. So let's talk about this and up through the making ceremony to the bird, which we named our episode after.
Yeah, Paul already alluded to this, but I just want to say that the show does not lend any kind of grandiousness to this process, right? It all seems sort of seedy and disappointing.
Yeah. Meet him at Modell's in half an hour.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they're having like this quiet night in, and honestly, after having seen the whole making ceremony, I was kind of like, maybe he just should have stayed home. They call him up, get my suit together. Okay, great. He looks nice. They meet in an ugly parking lot. Go sit in front, and you're like, oh shit, is something going to happen here? And it's impossible to divorce Michael Imperioli from Goodfellas Association, right? So there's that already before the viewer.
Yeah, it's baked in.
Yeah, they get to the making ceremony, which happens in this ugly basement, right? It's not even a private ceremony because someone else is being made at the same time who we don't know. Some other fucking mook.
This is a character. He is credited as Eugene Pontecorvo. This is a new character for the show. Up to this point, we've not been introduced to him.
Yeah.
Bacala, as far as the viewer's concerned, it's just some other tall guy.
Yeah. Bacala is futzing with the lights, to stupid effect.
Finish up over there.
Yeah, right. I wrote down in my notes that Tony is uttering these very important words. It might be the most important words that Christopher will ever hear in his life. It's basically swearing him into the family. But the way Tony speaks these lines, and we know that Tony is capable of great eloquence, they're not particularly eloquent. It almost sounds like he's kind of like, oh, this is what I heard. This is what I was told. The words are doubtlessly important and have enormous gravity, but they're not that well spoken.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, this and this and this and this is what will happen.
Yeah.
I don't know. It lacked a certain sense of the actual ceremony of what was happening.
To give another Goodfellas quote, it was like real greaseball shit. It wasn't,
It doesn't feel that special. And then, let's address the fact that Chris is not even in the moment. He's having a hard time being present because there's the creepiest fucking looking bird ever.
Yeah.
This blackbird tapping on the window, the bird of ill omen, right, that is knocking on the glass. And then in the back of your mind, maybe you're watching this scene and you're thinking, okay, this is a nasty place, but maybe they'll go someplace nice after to celebrate this. No, there's just like two naked women just kind of grinding on each other, and there's food just right around, and it's just gross. The whole thing is just
Tony's
gross.
standing like right next to them eating, watching the lesbian show is very funny.
Yeah, meat and sexuality.
Yeah.
Going right into it. I was making cheese dogs for you. I think they just invited two strippers into Vesuvio.
Yeah, they closed.
Oh, okay.
It's hilarious.
Yeah.
They got the back room at Vesuvio. Yeah, I mean, you guys are right on. The way that this is set up is very deliberate. It is ironic. It is fun. Maybe kind of like the executive game. Instead of glamour, they're going for privacy, of course. But yeah, this basement is seedy. It doesn't look good. The bird is very odd. And something to me does feel like it's tracking something where Christopher, much like he had to make a movie out of his life, needs to make something out of this because so much of the actual experience is fundamentally disappointing. It's not really living up to any kind of grandeur. So then I think he gets distracted by the bird, and it has some context, but as we've said, it's an ill omen. It's not good. And all of a sudden, what he's put all this energy into suddenly has the air sucked out of it for a moment. And then I think a lot of the rest of the episode, as he says, he's chasing it rather than making money. So it all adds up to a very odd, again, like, I think it's a funny, ironic opening in spite of the dark stuff because of the expectation of moving up in the world, and then it's kind of flat.
Yeah, there's like many times in The Sopranos, this happens time and time again. They go to Italy, whatever. It's something that's been hyped up, and it does not quite meet expectation. There's a romanticism put on it from the movies or whatever, but ultimately, yeah, it's a dingy basement. Could be like, somebody's aunt's basement,
So what's up with the Blackbird?
Well...
Or I guess it's a crow. I don't really know. Certainly not a good omen. I was taught, and they mentioned this in the episode, when a bird flies into your house, that is an ill omen.
Adriana tells him that.
And she actually says that exactly. She says it's an omen of death. My grandparents used to say that. I remember that. I don't know if that's just an Italian thing, by the way. I think that might be like a whole European thing. I think that's a multicultural thing. The bird seems to be tapping on the glass to almost get Chris's attention, and it's not behaving in any normal way, right? The bird is not trying to eat a worm. It's not trying to, it's not doing anything even bird-like. And it's enough to distract Chris, and he's looking at it beyond the glass, and then it's just simply gone. What I think disturbed me most about the bird, other than that it's really ugly, it's a fucked up looking bird, is that it's almost like, did I read this? I don't know if this was an individual reading, like, get out of there. Tap, tap, tap on the glass, get out of there.
Yeah.
Right? That's how it felt to me.
It does feel that way. It's absolutely Chris's perspective. It could have just been my experience of this isolated watch. I've watched this episode more than once in my life.
Yeah.
My reading was, I mean, certainly a blackbird is, in just very basic folklore, it seems like an omen of death. Mm-hmm. But my reading of it was, honestly, this doesn't mean anything.
Okay.
It's a bird, but also...
Well, but that's not... I want not to clarify for you, you're a very eloquent and intelligent human being, but I think you mean, doesn't mean anything in the larger sense. It means something to Chris.
It means something to Chris because Chris needs to make something of his life in his own mind.
Right.
And this imagery lends itself to that, even if it's an omen of death. I think I wrote this down. I'm usually not on Adriana's side when it comes to interpretation. But it's a coincidence. Let it go. You gotta. Because another thing that Chris realizes in this episode is being made doesn't mean that you've now come into this fullness. It actually operationally means you're a bit more aware of how you're a cog in a machine. Another great gangster movie, I think, is Donnie Brasco, which is more about the underlings in the mob. And Pacino's reflection in that movie is this guy we just whacked. What am I going to say about it? I'm a spoke in a wheel, and so is he, and so are you. I think that's where Chris comes in, and as if that's not enough, the ending points it out, because Chris makes a payment to Paulie at the end, Paulie goes and makes the payment to Tony. You're just one of many guys.
Yeah. In an episode where there's a big theme and presence of gambling, it was a good reminder to me that this entire lifestyle is a gamble.
Absolutely.
And gambling is a superstitious thing. There's superstitious people, they gamble on something because they stepped in something or found something in their pocket, or the name was somebody's middle name that was back in their family. Like, people who bet on stuff are very superstitious. And to have an omen of bad luck kind of looming over Chris is very much kind of, to me, suggesting to Chris, this is one bet that is this lifestyle is a bad bet, and you may not get out of it intact.
I don't disagree with Paul. Paul, I think you're right in saying we could just take this as he needs it to mean something, therefore it does, right? I think that's a totally valid interpretation. Because otherwise, what a disappointing thing this was, right? Let him at least take that away from it. But I don't know. I feel maybe I've been conditioned by all movies, all literature, whatever. Just maybe I'm searching for the meaning here because I want it to mean something too. That could be the case. I've also considered, and this really goes more with what Paul is saying, maybe there was no bird there. It's totally Chris's perspective.
Yeah.
Maybe only he saw it.
Yeah.
We could allow that as a reading, couldn't we?
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
There's a part of that is a very accurate interpretation. It's a valid interpretation.
Right. Also because it's behaving like no bird I have ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's not doing bird-like things. It's almost looking at him. It's birds don't do that. You're correct. Then it's gone in an instant. Like he looks away there, he's rubbing the card, and then he looks back, and it's just an empty window.
It's actually almost more comfortable to believe that's coming out some kind of like supernatural visitor, right? That it's Dickie Moltisanti, or that it's Brendan Fallone, or that it's somebody saying like, Chris, it's not too late. Just get out right now.
Yeah.
Oh, too late. You burned the card. You made the promise. You pricked your finger.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and this question that Jordan brings up, where you were thinking like, oh man, it's a bad get out, is also interesting, and we have to be specific here about Chris, because Chris, unlike a lot of the other characters, he's a younger man, and we have seen in the past couple of seasons, particularly I think in D-Girl in season 2, Chris considers another path. So that then after the process where he comes back, the shooting happens, he has now rededicated himself to this life, but then this omen, or the idea of this omen at least, prompts this reflection, I think, of something else.
I so agree, and pertinent to this episode's themes, right? This show is quite unkind to its young men, right? That really is the overarching theme of this episode, Fortunate Son, right? That Chris could have had some other life. That is always going to be lurking for him, and it's not the first time, nor the last time, that the show is going to have us, tackle this and come back to consider this. But, yeah.
I'm glad you also brought up Chris's experience in season 2, Paul, because I think that's relevant here to the conversation, whether we believe there was a physical bird outside that window, or if it was a manifestation of Chris's anxiety or yearning to get out of this, but feeling kind of stuck in a sense. Given his experience in season 2, his visiting of hell, his brush up against the supernatural, Chris, more than anybody in that room, might be more prone to a message like that. You know what I mean? He might be more sensitive to the sight of this ill omen looming outside the window.
Yeah. Well, and the meta-theatrical reading of this scene is that he feels like he is being watched. It could be by supernatural forces. It could be by literally us, the viewer.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's something outside of himself that's encouraging him to evaluate this moment. And we see the fallout from that in this episode.
St. Peter, by the way, among other things...
I was going to talk about St. Peter next. Good job, Paul.
...is the patron saint of butchers. Good luck, Mr. Satriali.
Yikes.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you mentioned that, Paul. I was going to bring up St. Peter and ask about the significance of that, so I'm very glad. Very awesome. So, yeah, they're at Vesuvio. We get this conversation with Paulie. Kind of makes it sound appealing. Hey, all you got to do, give me my $4,000 a week, or six G's a week. And you kick up to me, I kick up to Tony, and on it goes, this thing of ours. Chris has been doing well with the sports book. He's like, all right, this is it. This is kind of where I'm getting put for now. He's working for Paulie. Seems good enough. And then we meet a new character. We meet Johnny Sack's boss. So the way this works for the mob people out there, or the people who are paying attention to the structure of the families or whatever, New York has 5 mob families. Tony deals primarily through Johnny Sack, who's sort of an emissary underboss to one of the 5 family bosses. And we meet his boss, Carmine Lupertazzi. He has a very funny conversation with Tony here about epilepsy, and he asks about his spells. Tony says they're not spells. There's no stigmata these days. A lot of fun malapropism.
Yeah, the malapropism, very funny.
For Christ's sake, Julius Caesar was an epileptic.
I'm not an epileptic.
I'm going to do a little tut-tut to the Sopranos here. They introduce new characters in a very realistic fashion, but because it's realistic, it's actually very unforgiving for a new viewer. So for me, who's looking at this basically for the second time ever in life, not having seen it for 20 years, it is so hard for me to be like, oh, who is this? Did we meet this person before? Oh, Carmine. Oh, I bet Chris and Paul know who this is. Who is this?
Yeah.
Right? You only get a general sense like, okay, Tony really respects this guy. It's Johnny Sack's boss. Is this the New York boss? I don't know. He's a New York boss, I guess.
Yeah. The Sopranos universe follows that there are, and they mentioned this a couple times in various points. Not yet, though. Like you said, they just drop them in.
Yeah.
And we're made to accept them. They did it with Ralphie. It's what the show does. You got to kind of take it or leave it. There is going to be that moment of, but then the show is so good, you quickly accept it, and you understand the characters as time goes on.
No, to be clear, it's not a misstep. I'm not saying like the show's being lazy or disorganized or something like that. I'm just saying, like, as someone looking at this with new eyes who is so invested, you're like, oh wait, who is this? Did I meet them? Because after a while, some of these older men, this guy has glasses, this guy also has glasses, this guy has white wispy hair, so does this guy. Have I met him before? Is this the rat who's also working with the government? It's like, and these guys kind of amalgamate after a time.
Yep. I agree. But this is Carmine Lupertazzi.
Yep.
The Sopranos universe has, like our universe, a smaller mob family in Jersey and 5 bigger families in New York City. And what we're led to believe in this universe of Sopranos, and I'm not entirely sure if this is how it works in the real world, it may, but one of the 5 families kind of oversees the Jersey family. And we're led to believe that Carmine is the boss of this family, and Johnny Sack is sort of the bishop piece. He's the or the underboss. He goes and gets stuff done. He interacts between the two.
I guess they wanted to, so they could briefly show that the guy outranks Johnny Sack. He tells him to answer the fucking thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Answer the cell phone. I guess this guy could be a bit of a father figure to Tony. He's old enough to be Tony's dad. He is not a threatening or impending father figure. He's kind of like a sweet but curmudgeon-y old guy.
Yeah.
So I think it's a fun irony that what he points to is something serious. Tony doesn't like that he even knows about this.
Yeah.
And he wants his privacy. And it compels him to go to Melfi in their next session and insist that this starts showing results. And it does.
Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about that Melfi scene in a second because it's so good. And yes, again, I'll always honor our no spoiler policy, but there are moments coming up in the show with Carmine Lupertazzi that endear me to him. We'll talk about it. He has a lot of very funny lines. This actor is also in a lot of gangster stuff. If you look back, I think he's even in Goodfellas too. I think Goodfellas as well. So yeah, but we get this quick scene after this with Janice, and this is sort of a
dear Lord.
A subplot in this episode that just makes you groan. That give you the Janice groan. She's staying with Tony. Very clearly, her presence drives him nuts. She gets exactly what she wants just by existing in Tony's space. Tony arranges Svetlana to get out of the house, and she's eating a sandwich. She references her 19-year-old fiance Drew, who can go all night.
Chris.
Ew.
Yuck.
And so he basically says, hey, let's get you back over there. And she's like, great, okay.
Another irony is that he's doing this to get rid of this family burden.
Yeah.
And indirectly, this will lead to him looking at a lot of family history, because after Janice swipes the leg, he goes over to the house, and that's when he looks at the meat.
Yep. It also is classic Janice in that Tony thinks he's getting her out of his hair, and the result is only going to further complicate his life. Very funny stuff. Janice is just so gross and funny. And then we get the Ufa Pizzeria. Another first appearance here. The guy with Chris is a new character named Benny Fazio. We've not been introduced to him, but he's going to be sticking around for a little bit.
Played by Max Casella, who I know best from Newsies, the musical. He played Racetrack when he was a kid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was exciting.
I like Max Casella. He's one of these faces that just pops up here and there on TV and in movies and things like that. He's a
funny kid. Well, adult man now, but funny kid.
Yeah. So he's with Chris, and he's a character that we're going to see more of as time goes on. But so, yeah, 3 new characters dropped on us. 2 of them we didn't even really hear speak all that much. Eugene Pontecorvo, who's the guy being made with Chris. Benny Fazio, who's with Chris. And Carmine Lupertazzi. So they're dropping in new characters, as is normal when you start a new season. You expand the world of the show a little bit.
And we have Dino in this scene as well. Is he new?
Jackie Jr.'s friend Dino.
Okay,
yes.
Right.
So another just
the new Brennan Fallone.
Yeah, the new putz that's kicking around with Jackie Jr. Right. I wrote the line, speaking of zeros with shoes, here's Jackie and Dino. They Greek, everyone's happy for Chris's it's like sort of this Chris going to the old neighborhood, and everyone's like, hey, congrats, he's He's got his button. Everyone, so the world knows about it. Chris is a made man.
Right, extremely overdressed for this pizza parlor.
Yeah,
Something
yeah,
you'd
yeah.
only do performatively.
Yes, exactly.
I wrote down anytime a character on The Sopranos utters the line, "I don't want to sound like an asshole," if after that their lips are moving, they're sounding like an asshole.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He really can't be seen in a place like this anymore. Very funny.
Overshadowed by what a fucking little shitbag Jackie Jr. is.
Yeah.
So when I do my notes, the first thing I try to figure out is I write down like A, B, C, D, E, however many plots there are. And for this thing, I just wrote Jackie Jr. is a dick. That's the plot. He's just, you don't like him. He's the very definition of like everything that Tony and the guys like don't like about the younger generation, but he's also in a different situation than some of the other younger characters in that he's riding the line. He's at Rutgers, he's not at Rutgers, he's dropping out, he's in.
This is why he's actually more interesting than the others we've seen of this type, right? Fucking Chip and Dale from last season, Matt and I already forget the other
Matt and
fucking
Sean.
guy. Matt and Sean, thank you. Or Brendan Falone, right? Jackie is actually, to me, even in this early iteration of him, is more like a Christopher.
Yeah.
Right? Where, he's annoying. He's an absolute dick in this scene. He's an asshole, disrespectful. We'll get much more of him very soon. But also it's like, he has the Rutgers angle, right? We know that he is, obviously Jackie's son, so friends of the family. It's like, it kind of puts the question out there, underneath these scenes, can this young man be redeemed?
Yeah.
Right? And watching this as an older viewer, right, who works with kids, I'm kind of like, okay, you know what? Kids, to some extent, they're supposed to be assholes.
Yeah.
Right? I'm sorry for kids that are listening, kids are supposed to be stupid. Yeah. They're supposed to make some mistakes. They need someone who's going to sit them down and be like, you're fucking up.
Yeah.
Let me tell you how you're fucking up, and let's see if you can fix it. So the challenge is out there. Can someone fix Jackie Jr.?
I agree wholeheartedly. And I had an asshole phase as a kid as well. There was a summer theater camp I did for many years, and the first year, nobody really liked me. I was obnoxious. I had like a friend or two, but I was like kind of obnoxious. The older kids in the camp were like, "What the fuck is this kid?"
Yeah.
And I just rubbed people the wrong way. And then I don't know. I did a lot of growing up. 2 summers later, everyone was like, "Dude, you've come a long way. Kids are dicks. Kids are dicks." I did things as kids I think about now. Throwing snowballs at cars, which is a very dangerous thing to do. Like, you do dumb, stupid, dangerous shit as a kid.
And either you're going to come around to it yourself, which is rare, by the way, or an older kid or an adult is going to come into your life, they're going to put things in a way you understand, and it's going to change you. Mm-hmm. And that's what you hope for.
This is so important, the points you guys are making, because, the title of the episode is Fortunate Son. We're dealing with either biological sons or sons in spirit, like taking someone under your wing, that sort of thing. And Jackie Jr. mentions it right up front. His actual father had passed away, and the guy who had taken him under his wing was Richie Aprile.
Yeah.
So we see, so now he has seemingly very little to no guidance, and the guidance he had before was not good. And now we're getting into this weird phase where the guidance he's going to get, though it might, in fact, be the right advice, is coming from the wrong place. It's Tony Soprano saying, you don't want any part of this, even though I represent, like, what you're going after. Yeah. In a weird way, Johnny Soprano's advice was more consistent, because it was like, come along with me. It's troubling in a way to watch, even though I do think it's funny how the kid can be a dick. Because I feel weird about where, as Jordan said, it's not kind to young men, where a lot of the young men in this show are going.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, let's just hope he learns his lesson and never disrespects the pizza parlor again. I love that line. Don't disrespect the pizza parlor. It's just a funny, ridiculous line.
Like 3 seconds later, I can't be seen in a place like this.
Christopher, not much better in this scene, but again, he's 2 seconds older than Jackie, so whatever.
Also, great name of a pizza place. I actually normally I'm good with my North Jersey locations. I actually don't know if that is actually called the Ufa Pizza Restaurant.
I hope it is.
But if it is, I want to go there.
Great.
I want to go get a slice of the Ufa.
Fuck yeah.
So then we get to this therapy scene that you referenced earlier. Tony basically sits down. I love this scene because, especially coming off of season 2, where there are scenes had no direction. They were both straying and lost, and they weren't even together for half of it. They're both very direct with each other here.
Yeah.
They're back on track. Tony's like, this has got to show results or end. Melfi fucking answers him directly. Here's what's going on. Here's how to treat it. Very cool. I like this start. Enough fucking around is the quote I wrote about this scene.
Yeah.
He expresses, forgive me, audience. He says, my daughter brought home a black. Melfi lets that go
Yes.
for the sake of
Tony's words. Yes.
Melfi lets that go for the sake of the larger issue here at this point. He talks about what happened when he passed out after the Noah incident that was very ugly and terrible.
Every time he describes this scene, which happened at the beginning of the last episode,
Yeah.
Right.
it gets worse.
Yeah.
It becomes more of a catastrophe in his mind.
Yeah.
It's like that they they were like snuggling on the couch together.
Yeah.
He never saw them on the couch together.
Yeah.
But it keeps getting worse because when
He's imagining it.
he's doing the Livia thing in his mind, it keeps getting more and more of a horrible show.
Dare I say it's a big fucking opera brought on by repressed rage?
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the end of the last season, I think it was almost like a throwaway line. Melfi talked about like how the racist attacks on Indian food are just a distraction. I'm not letting Tony off the hook for like calling the kid buckwheat or whatever. And the Uncle Ben imagery, isn't this just actually a distraction? Actually, what the trigger, if you will, we're going to get to is the meat.
Yeah.
Which is going to become the therapeutic focus.
Yep. So Tony speaks frankly. Melfi's ready to commit. You panic attack disorder. We're going to treat it this way. She gets him talking. He elicits the trigger. We're on the cusp of something. I, as an audience member watching this the first time, I was very intrigued by this. Ooh, what is she onto here? And then Tony gets the call. It's his busy season. We're going to hear that quote several times this episode when Tony gets pulled away from something. And then when he comes back, they lost the momentum.
There's some disappointment here.
Yeah.
This is a huge revelation, and as an audience member, you want to hear much more about it. This is, really good stuff. And Tony's not even really that interested in it,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and when he's on the phone, they're talking football.
Yeah.
They're talking bets, and Tony admonishes whoever's on the other side, make sure he's good for it. And we're gonna come back to why Tony always verifies that sort of thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
So then we get Casa Soprano. We got a nice long sequence at Casa Soprano dinner scene. I mean, at this point in the show, the writers must know these characters so well. These actors, these dinner scenes must like write themselves. You just put all these people in a room and the amazing shit that comes out. But we first get a little scene of Chris fucking up at the betting parlor. I am admittedly, I'm usually pretty good about like the gangster schemes, and I've read a lot about real gangsters and the shit they pulled. Sports betting is something I actually don't know very much about. I'm not clear on the specifics, but the point is Chris royally fucked up and owes a lot of people money.
Right. So I know a bit. I actually think it's just simply that there's no angle on the sports betting. It's just that it's illegal.
Right.
So they just.
And he
Do you mean in terms of like a spread?
I don't understand how sports betting really works. I've never done it. I'm not a huge sports fan. I like baseball.
Right.
But I'm not a huge sports fan myself, so I just don't understand. I don't even know necessarily what they mean by a spread.
The folks that are betting on these games are not just betting on who will win or who will lose.
Yeah,
That's
it's a
too
point
simple a bet.
spread, right?
They're betting on the spread of points between the two teams.
Yeah.
Between if you're, if you win and then you lose, you look at the two scores at the end, and then you look at those scores in each quarter of the game or each half of the game, depending on what you're sort of betting on. Obviously, as we see in like movies like Casino and other big mob things, right? The folks that are running these sports betting parlors, the house always wins, right? They have little ins and outs, and they know they're betting on these games themselves as well. So there is money flowing back and forth, and you're hoping that your money, is spread across enough of these games that you're not too exposed into one game that might go poorly for you. But Chris has not found the rhythm yet. Mm-hmm. Or perhaps he had the rhythm previously and the Blackbird has fucked him up.
Yeah.
Johnny Boy in the flashback says to Tony, another important quote, "You should never gamble."
Says it twice.
But as you said, Chris, isn't this whole life a gamble? And as Jordan pointed out, that we're also placing bets. We're placing bets on how this is going to operate so that we can actualize this idea that the house always wins. We can come out on top. But yeah, it is a gamble, as we say. Chris learns this harsh lesson, even though Paulie isn't running a school. And The other thing I just want to say briefly, I loved in the overall the imagery how football and betting operated as a kind of religion or ritual in this world. Not only that AJ is playing it, but that they watch it, they call it their busy season, literally, like as if they work at Macy's during Christmas.
Right, yeah.
I love that sort of thing. And it just, it added so much character. It added so much vibrancy to the episode. So I was just delighted with it.
I agree. So Tony's asking Chris over the grill full of meat. No coincidence, that's kind of what we cut to right after the Melfi scene about meat.
AJ comes out, Mom's waiting for the meat.
Yep, exactly. And, they're talking about to turn that one link there. Ralphie swears in front of AJ, so we see Ralphie at the homestead. And
Ralphie still, I always will comment on costumes. Boy, this guy's always very suspiciously nicely dressed.
Yes.
Right? What is that? I don't know. I'll keep commenting on it because it only gets worse. But
yeah. Good. No, wardrobe's important, man. It's
Well, it's just like, what are you trying to say about yourself, right? The expression is clothes make the man. What kind of man is being made of Ralph Cifaretto,
Chris says he had a light setback, nothing to worry about. Tony seems kind of amused. It's a very father-son kind of thing. Son's starting out the new job, and Tony's asking how it's going, and he's had his knocks a little bit. Tony tells Chris to watch out for Jackie. Make sure, Tony doesn't want him involved in this shit. He promised his dad. We find out that Ralphie and Rosalie April are a thing. They're dating, and they're here at the Sunday dinner together. Jackie's running late. They're talking about how disrespectful it is. One of my favorite, they slipped this one in on you, but Rosalie tells everyone, Ralph had to drop out of school to take care of his sisters. And Carmela's mother says, you'd never know it.
She rules.
Yeah, just very funny.
So AJ, any hotties, the cheerleaders?
Yeah, there's no cheerleaders in freshman ball.
What a little dick.
Yeah, I know. She excuse the shit out of her for asking.
Yeah. The dinner scene is great actually here because, I know it's not a Robin Green Mitchell Burgess credit, but I'm sure they worked on it. It stitches together a lot of different stuff happening in this episode.
Yes.
And it does it really well. There's a lot of laughs here. Of course, Chris struggling. We get that Ralphie's a pig, albeit well-dressed one.
Yep.
The stuff with Adriana and AJ not being able to deal with anybody's projection of what's going on.
Yep.
Onto him. Meadow is still icing Tony out. The whole Jackie's being a prick. The whole thing.
Carmela mentioned something about Tony being outside, and she says burning a cross. So clearly she's gained a little bit more information since we last saw her.
Yes.
And AJ's funny. He's bored. Everyone's here. It's really boring. Jackie calls in. He's very rude to Rosalie, a character we love. So fuck him. He just says fuck it. Doesn't show up. Chris brings Paulie 4Gs in the back of Satrial's. 4Gs, it's not a bad. If someone hands me an envelope of 4Gs, I'm pretty happy about it, but it's not acceptable. I'm not.
The minimum was $6.
Six grand minimum, 10%. And I love that line where he tells them, $6,000 that could be a lot or a little. That depends on you. Right. And Paulie doesn't cut him slack. He does in a sense. He's like, I'm going to give you a couple days. It's going to cost you another $2,000 as a reminder not to fuck it up.
I thought fair.
Oh, actually. I agree. And that's as fair as it gets in this lifestyle. Yeah. He could have slapped the shit out of him, and
on the merits, this business is not forgiving of mistakes or what Davey Scatino in the second season called stutter steps. Mm-hmm. The other intriguing factor for me here is the following: Chris comes in and Paulie is sleeping on a cot. Yeah, and then goes up and has a toothbrush at the place. I guess Mr. Satriali stopped asking questions about people hanging out there when, they cut off his pinky finger. Yeah. But the other, Tony said in that opening with the making ceremony, this life comes before your wife and your children and your mother and your father. Other than the business, Paulie has what? Nothing.
Yeah, this is Paulie's life.
This is the life. So, of course, it's a bit easier for Paulie. He's meeting, this is the life, and that's all he's known. And he's settled into it. So I thought that was a good juxtaposition with Chris, whose attention is, by many things, pulled in different directions.
Well said. Then we get this interesting scene. Tony has that sit-down moment with Jackie. He invites him to lunch. at Vesuvio.
Jackie's wearing this fucking asshole pair of sunglasses that then perches on his hair.
I love this moment because Tony tells him lose the glasses. This is a little like kind of inside Sopranos thing. There's one character on The Sopranos allowed to wear sunglasses. Do we know who that person is off the top of your heads?
Tony?
Christopher.
Christopher
has worn sunglasses at many points in the series, and he's the only one. David Chase and the showrunners were like, he can wear sunglasses. Don't know why. Maybe it's just an aesthetic thing or whatever. Not quite sure the exact reason, but no one on the show was ever allowed to do sunglasses. So I love that Jackie comes in. He's breaking this is meta, but he's like kind of breaking one of the rules of the show. And Tony's like, lose the glasses. Not happening. So that's cool. Yeah, when you see a character wearing sunglasses on The Sopranos, it's jarring. He puts them up on his head. Tony's eating this delicious linguine with clams. He's wearing a suit. He's presenting. He's kind of peacocking. He's I'm the daddy. I'm the boss. He's mad at Jackie late again for this lunch meeting, being very disrespectful. And Tony, he's worried about Jackie, and he feels like maybe Jackie needs to let go of his mentorship with Richie before any progress can be made here. So Tony drops the story on him. Your Uncle Richie was a rat. He's putting on a show here. He's performing. He does a great job at it. Jackie's probably very much concerned with reputation and what everybody thinks. And when Tony says to him, he's like, ask anybody. This is the story on Richie, that he's in the witness protection program. For whatever it's worth, it seems, while there's an initial violent reaction there, he seems to accept it. So maybe Tony can move forward from this.
Yeah, there's also a kernel of truth in what Tony tells him, because he actually tells him that, I didn't kill him.
Yeah.
Right? Which is actually true.
Right. Yes. Yes, he does that very cool thing where he speaks the truth in a way that is deceitful. So he's like, on the other hand, he'd be an asshole to believe me, but I didn't.
Yeah. And he's right. I love the way Gandolfini plays the scene in general. There's one point where he's trying to get Jackie's attention and he
slaps the fork on the plate. Yeah,
very good.
Look at me.
Jackie is also coming into the scene. He's an embodiment of what Artie is talking about at the beginning of the scene when he comes out, and essentially I think talks about how they had spoiled their kids a bit. We gave them too good a home life. They didn't want to leave the nest. They didn't want to go away. But they're closer with us than we were with our parents. Is that such a bad thing? And I think that's the conundrum of this episode. In some way, is that there's actually there's an emotional bridge between them, but it's a bit more complicated now.
Yeah.
Certainly it is with Tony and Meadow. So then this scene plays out. Yeah, I love that Tony is lying, at least in part. It's the truth that he didn't kill him. It's a lie that he's a rat. Is it the best thing for him to, but it might be the best thing for him to think. Yeah, I love the way this whole sequence plays out.
This is more of just my personal opinion, but I wish Tony had the ability in this moment to guide him away from being a doctor, even though he doesn't want him to be in the gangster lifestyle. I also don't think he's, from what I know of him, fit to be a doctor either.
Right.
And he's like, it's hard, I don't want to do it. I think Tony might have more long-term success with Jackie had he said, hey, listen, what do you want to do then? Like, let's figure something else out for you. But it's kind of like he just sticks to the old, this isn't what your dad wanted, and, he's kind of playing up the negative. It's sort of like, well, you're not doing this. So go back to Rutgers.
Right. Well, Jackie Jr. is a project, and it's like, who's going to take this project on, if anyone? Unfortunately, up to now, it's been Richie, which, good lord. Right? Tony kind of has his hands full. I mean, he's the boss of the family. He has to raise his own son. Christopher is his surrogate son. He already has enough young men kind of attached onto him that need him for guidance. And as we know, because we know Tony intimately, he's not in a position to be really guiding anyone very well either.
Yeah.
Right? So unfortunately, Jackie's going to end up in the hands of Ralph Cifaretto, as we'll soon see. And obviously no spoilers, but those are not good hands.
Yeah. Yep. We bring back a character in the next scene from Season 1, Episode 4, Meadowlands. Tony is watching football with Mr. Piacosta. AJ almost had the kind of baseball field fight.
Though I didn't see Jeremy on the field.
They never showed Jeremy. Okay. I guess we have to assume he's playing.
Yes, otherwise why would Mr. Piacosta be there?
Right, well, Jeremy is in the first episode of the season, Mr. Ruggiero's neighborhood.
Oh, that's right.
And Piacosta, with the jersey.
The football jersey, that's right.
What first intrigued
You're right.
AJ to join the football team.
Yeah, so they seem to have made nice, and this is a fun scene. I like the way they did it. Tony, they're just yakking about football, but I love how fired up Tony is. He mentions in one of the previous seasons, somebody's like, "Look at you, Tony, we're girls soccer." And he's like, "What do you want? My only son's a couch potato." Tony loves AJ playing football. This is great. He's cheering. He's happy. He's rooting AJ get in there. AJ makes this great play. He catches this fumble. They slow the action down. You're wondering, oh my God, was he hurt? Was something? No, he made the big play. And they cheer, and it's great. And Tony's so excited. He's got his arm around him. He's talking football strategy with him. He wants him to throw his Nintendo out the window, go out for a couple of dogs.
He wants to reward him with meat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Yep. Meat is all over this episode. And a little touch, and then I want to just go back and talk about this football thing for a second, but little touch that this show, again, it's all about the little touches that make something good great. They go out for dogs after his football game, and in the next scene we see Tony, he's walking in the back of the Bing, he's got a mustard stain on his shirt. Come on, that's great. That's attention to detail. But yeah,
that's something I would spill the moutarde, because I always like a little moutarde on the old.
If I have any kind of shirt that is light colored, it's over. I can't even eat that day, or it's done. I can't keep light colored clothing. But yeah, thoughts on AJ as a football player and how it lights up Tony and how he seems, for the first time, this is one of the first few times we see Tony really into something that AJ's doing. And
the other reason I thought of Down Neck was, of course, in part the episode itself, but also one of the memorable parts of our first season, I thought, was when we recorded Down Neck and Jordan talked about AJ as a gray kid. Mm-hmm. And I think AJ has started to fill in some color since then. However, this is still, I think it seems way too much for him. It's pretty clear throughout the episode, if it wasn't clear enough, then the ending will make it absolutely clear, that, again, these people projecting these ideas onto him is something that's too much.
Yeah.
Jackie Jr. is having a hard time figuring out his path in life. Other folks see him as the heir apparent, right? What is the future of this guy? Tony doesn't want him to be part of the life, right? Tony says, I don't want that for my own son. I don't want AJ to be part of the life either. He says this to Jackie Jr.
Yeah.
We see him at the football game, and it turns out AJ is actually doing quite well. He makes a valuable, play in the game, ends up, I think, winning the game. Tony wants to celebrate with him. He is emerging from, as Paul says, from his grayness, right? This could be something special for AJ, whereby he could use it as the fulcrum by which to define himself, finally. And I can only feel sad because I'm looking at AJ. If I were to just look at Tony, I'd be like, this is great.
Yeah.
Wow, AJ's finding himself. But I'm looking at AJ, and this kid's not happy. He does not feel triumphant. He seems lost. Mm-hmm. I think he is starting to realize that he does not know his track, his place, his path, as to how it also relates to his place in the family and his father. He doesn't know what this future is. Yeah, it's
to the point where he gets
worrisome. Yeah.
To the point where he gets upset when Tony mentions a quote that he very much did say in one of the previous seasons about going to Harvard or West Point. He denies it. He gets a little crabby about it.
Well, I think he's actually a little embarrassed, too.
Yeah.
Because now that he's a little older, he realizes, really smart people go to those schools. Yeah. And that was just something I had said, and I have to backtrack off of that.
Bunch of freaks, right? He pulls you out.
Yeah.
So they have this family dinner. Carmela makes sure that they're all having dinner together when Meadow leaves. Lily and I, watching the episode together, mentioned your talk about graduation being like the last year thing, and that felt very real and connected to that. It's like, no, we're still the family that's going to all get together, and they're trying to maintain some familial normalcy with Meadow being gone. So I like that. I think that's a very real thing.
Yeah, it's a nice irony, too. I think that Meadow and AJ, both teenage kids, when they were living together, they sniped at each other. They maybe didn't get along too great. Now Meadow is gone, and any excuse to talk to her on the phone, go see her, hang out with her, especially to get away from all these people who are living out their various ideas on AJ. He wants to go and get away. I love that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We get a couple rapid fire scenes right after this dinner scene. Meadow calls. She doesn't want to talk to Tony, and she asks his mom there 3 times. Hands the phone over to AJ. He walks off. This thing with Meadow is starting to frustrate Tony. You can see it on him. And then we get this quick scene. Janice is staying at the house. It's kind of like Svetlana's last night at the house. Janice is staying there. And she approaches her. And to me, because we know who Janice is, obviously manipulative way. She asks about the records and giving the records back, but she presents it in a way that Svetlana might think she's softening up and asking nicely. She pulls her leg off. We know she's one-legged, but we haven't actually seen her pull the leg off, and sets it next to her bed. Intercut in this moment, Chris is panicking. It was that fucking bird. He's looking for shit to sell. It's this frantic, upsetting scene. He's scrambling to get these last $2,000 for Paulie. He shoves Adriana. He bought a Range Rover. He can't afford it. He's looking for that bracelet he got her. And that
if Adriana's mother didn't need to pay for her hysterectomy, I'm sure giving money to Christopher would be her first choice. Because of what a gentleman he is.
Right. And the beeper goes off. He just fucking Christ and grabs his forehead. I felt that in my soul. That's good acting. Just how you can imagine that pager's been going off every 10 minutes until he calls back, and he's just had it.
You said it, 24-hour call.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All the time. Then we get the morning, and the leg is gone.
Great way that this is set up. It's a panning shot across the room as Svetlana's waking up, and it seems very deliberately there's one side with a bigger lamp, one side with a smaller lamp, and it's like, do we realize just a couple seconds before she does that the leg is not there?
Yeah.
And then her hopping off. I love all the... I didn't think of this until this time. I think one of the reasons I'm so delighted by these storylines with Svetlana and Janice in particular is that Svetlana, in spite of the fact that she can't speak English nearly as well as she can, as she's comfortable with in her native Russian, we see her speaking on the phone in that language. In spite of that capacity with English, she's still more concise and direct than Janice, who has grandiloquence, but it's all hooey.
Yeah.
The reason these two are so fun together in these little moments at the graveyard in the last episode, this one, no spoiler, but you can tell by the way this all wraps up, this is not the end of this storyline, so future episodes. The reason these two characters are fun together is, I think I wrote this down, Svetlana is no nonsense, Janice is all nonsense. Mm-hmm. So it's a natural bleep. Yep. She just has this like blunt Russian cynicism about her, and Janice is probably like everything that's wrong with entitled, manipulative, passive-aggressive Americans, and it's just that's built right into it. The actors are really great. These two do such a nice job together. And
have you ever paused to think how much these records could possibly actually be worth? It's more that she can't have them, right?
Right.
That's got to be it. What could these records really be worth? Can she even get $1,000 out of this? I don't think so.
I doubt it. No, I mean, they'd have to be like in maybe pristine condition, unopened.
Right.
Yeah.
I think if they really were worth something, right, beyond the fact that maybe Svetlana would just really authentically like to own them, I think she probably would have sold them already herself.
Yeah.
Right? But she hasn't. She still has them. I don't think they're worth that much. I think it's more just that Janice was told she couldn't have something and she got a couple bucks out of it, right?
Yep.
The whole family is criminal, but Janice will literally steal the gold fillings out of your teeth. She really will.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well said. I like that. She will. Hey, church bells. It's a Sopranos podcast tradition at this point.
That's right.
And things have gotten really bad for Chris. This kind of frantic Chris energy. I mean, he's beating up a drug addict in some back alley for $300.
Yeah.
That's low. You just got made. This is like the shit he shouldn't be doing now, right?
Yeah.
But he is, because he's chasing it now. And,
whenever a guy starts off by saying, I ain't using, that's probably a good indication that you're dealing with a drug addict.
Yep. Svetlana calls Tony over to talk about this leg. She has to use this... Irina's there. She has to use this old piece of shit.
Irina. Just when we think we're done with Irina.
I know. Yep. Nope. She's there. She's speaking to Tony, and I don't see why we can't be friends. That's laughable. She almost killed herself when they broke up, so I think it's pretty apparent, but she's young and she's in a different mindset.
Is this where she mentioned she is marrying someone else?
Yeah, she says she's engaged.
Right, which sounds completely it might be true, but it very flimsy.
Yeah,
exactly. We haven't seen her since the end of season 2, so we
no clue who it is, if it's real, if it's a citizenship thing, who the hell knows?
Right.
But there's some Miller Genius in the fridge. When she calls Miller Genuine Draft Miller Genius.
Right, yeah. And so he just kind of brushes off Irina, calls it out, like we could have had this discussion over the phone. Goes to get...
and Svetlana admits it.
Yeah, sorry, Tony.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Svetlana's a very likable character.
Very likable. I actually love Svetlana.
Yeah. The more I see of her, the more endeared I am to her. She's got a maturity and a worldliness to her that Irina doesn't have, and she's very charming and funny and just well played by that actress. So
well, she's exactly the right character for the show because it's a show in which everyone is lying constantly, and it's actually refreshing to just hear someone who like everything they say is just like, no, this is what it is.
Yeah. Yep,
you know?
Exactly. And I love the next sequence. I think this is kind of, in many ways, even though when I think of this episode, I think of it as primarily a Chris episode. To me, this is the heart. This is the meat of the matter, to make it a pun.
Well, this is another quality that I love in this episode. I'll admit, stylistically, flashbacks are not my favorite. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily like them in shows. I think they can take up too much space. So a really good thing about this flashback is it gets a lot done, and it leaves an imprint without taking up too much time. Doesn't need to. And
what I love about the way The Sopranos does flashbacks, too, is it's not just we're seeing something because now it's time for the audience to see it. The way they do it is Tony sees something that prompts it, and then as it ends, he's telling the story to Melfi.
Yeah.
So it's not frivolous. It's not thrown in because now it's time to reveal to the audience what's behind all this. It's being told. We're just seeing it instead of hearing it.
And we have a shorthand for the show by now.
Yeah.
We've been here a couple seasons. We know we're going right into therapy.
Exactly.
And it moves along.
But a little touch right before it gets into this, she says, Svetlana tells him, your mother's meat delivery still comes every week. This is the same weekly meat delivery from Satriale's that we see in the flashback. So that's cool. That's a cool touch. But he opens up the gabagool. They were talking about gabagool earlier with Melfi. Capicola, for those of you out there who are annoyed by that. But if you're annoyed by that, hey, what can I tell you? Fuck you.
No one calls it by its proper name, at least on Long Island.
No.
I've actually... I had to look up what that actually was. I've only ever heard it referred to as gabagool.
I remember the first time, and this was years ago, because I'm an older Italian guy and I love gabagool. But I remember the first time in my life I wanted to get a gabagool on like a sandwich. I didn't know how to spot it on the menu. I was like,
yeah. You'd be looking for a G.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, but it's spelled, especially in some places even do it like capicolo.
Right.
So it's
in fact,
totally
I think if you were to go to a deli on Long Island and you said, can I have, and actually to say capicolo or whatever you want to say there instead of gabagool, I think they'd just look at you like, oh, you're not from here, huh?
Yeah. Very true. I think it's similar out here in Jersey too. So we get this old man Satriale flashback. These, again, we've talked about this before. These actors playing Johnny Boy and Jr. very good.
Yes. And this flashback has a very different look than the flashback from Down Neck. Yeah. Down Neck has a very idealized, very bright sort of look at the past. This is grainier and...
Yeah, I feel like a fever dream.
Yeah.
I'm on Johnny Boy's lap.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And Johnny Boy is, like, manic in this sequence, right? Both at home and at the butcher's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We don't get much glimpses of these characters, but you get enough to make those assessments. And I don't think Olivia was the only adult in this family to have mental health issues. I think it's both. In fact, Hesh mentions that he had the same kind of anxiety attacks. I think Johnny Boy's very high strung and neurotic, and that certainly doesn't play well with a woman like Livia. So that's the kind of environment this family grew up in. And so this old man Satriale flashback. Tony is 11 here, they say, which is they don't explicitly mention how old Tony is in Down Neck, but he looks like 6, 7, 8, that ballpark.
Younger, yeah.
So we're like 4 or 5 years later. Yeah, they did a great job casting this kid, Satriale. He's gambling is back. He owes money. They take him in back to talk to him. He's ducking Johnny Boy. Gets his free meat delivery, throws that up as a partial payment. Johnny feels like he's being back-talked. Tony sneaks in. Boom. Off with the pinky. And he's telling this story to Melfi. And she tells him that's traumatic for anyone to witness, much less an 11-year-old. And she's absolutely right.
He corrects her.
Yeah.
Wasn't traumatized by it.
Yeah, it was a rush.
Exhilarated.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
That was my question for you guys. Is
right.
that true?
I think so.
It may have felt that way. I think, sure, I'm sure it's exhilarating, but I also don't know that an 11-year-old could properly process exactly what he's feeling. It's possible that exhilaration he felt was dread.
That's written all over the kid's face, that I don't think he can really process it. What the dad then says to him could contextualize it.
Yeah.
Which is that you stayed.
Yeah.
You didn't run like a little girl.
Yeah. Sad. In this scene makes me sad, where he's kind of talking to him. It's like, the fact that he's proud. I feel like he should be horrified. But he's proud of Tony for staying there and watching that and not running like a little girl, quote unquote.
Yeah, though Johnny Boy is just a whole different animal, right?
Oh, it's a different generation.
Johnny
He's a
Boy
different guy.
has never hidden the fact that he's a gangster from Tony,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like Tony has done with his own children. Johnny Boy at no point said, I never want Tony to be a gangster, right? Opposite. He seems to almost be encouraging, like, this is the family business. This is what I do, and I'm glad you didn't run away. Right? So Tony has had, like, a whole different upbringing. We will hear, multiple times in this show, excuses made for Tony. He comes from a different time. He upholds different standards, right? This part plays into that, right? Whether he realizes or not, yes, he was traumatized, but these feelings are complicated, right?
Yeah.
And Melfi is trying to get everyone to connect this, both the audience and Tony. There is some connection between sexuality, right? Your parents' sexuality, your sexuality, consuming meat specifically, right? The food with the sexuality, violence. Acts of violence, blood, the severing of limbs, right? The carnality of that.
Yeah.
The sexual nature of that. And upholding these things as a value, right? Oh, there's something all in there in that pie, right?
Yes. Well said, man. I love that shot where he has the meat juice on his finger and feeds it to her pinky.
Little Barbara asks, "Can I have the end piece?"
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, he cut off this guy's pinky. They sent beautiful cut. He sent, no shit. The bone standing in it. He's squeezing his wife's buns. This sexualized dance and singing "All of Me." I mean, come on.
Yeah.
No wonder the kid fucking passes out.
Yeah.
Janice, a little bit older here. The casting of the girl looks more like the current Janice, right? I thought just really good kid casting.
Yeah.
I thought
Perfect.
They nailed this.
Oh, they were great.
And this version of Johnny Boy, again, I'm going to harp on this, even though we're only 2 seasons away from the first season when we first saw the Johnny Boy flashback, whatever, this 5 years between Tony being 6 or 7 years old versus being 11 years old in the flashback now. Yeah, Johnny Boy just seems a little off, right? He's a little manic in this flashback. He's scary, right? A scarier guy.
The kid is scared.
Yeah.
Of his dad. It's the only thing that's more powerful, to Jordan's point, about the rush. The only thing that's more powerful, the fear of the dad, is the curiosity. Because the kid's told twice, go back to the car. But he has to see. Right? He has to see.
Yeah, exactly. 4 stitches, ruined dinner.
Love that line. So an Italian-American reaction.
Yep. And I wrote here that, and then Melfi kind of talks him through, and Tony's kind of amazed that all this came from a slice of gabagool, and she talks about Proust's Madeleine, and she explains exactly what it is. I like Tony's line, it's played for laughs, but it's, this all sounds very gay. I hope you're not saying that.
But valuable, right? Because haven't we all experienced that? Biting into the cookie and having all the memories, right? This is a universal human experience that a taste will bring you back to a time and place.
A taste, a smell.
Sure.
Yes, absolutely.
You can accidentally go to a restaurant and taste a spoonful of something and be like, my grandmother made this. And you actually have to sit there for a moment as your brain processes that food. There is something there. And Melfi is trying to acknowledge this. This is not uncommon that food has this power.
Correct.
In Tony's defense, Proust was kind of gay.
Yeah, he was.
I wrote here that she tells him understanding root causes will make you less vulnerable to future episodes. And there it is. This is the why. If Tony understands where this all comes from and is trying to get to the bottom of these complicated feelings, she asks him to start writing things down.
Yeah, to which I wrote in my notes, ha.
Right.
H-A exclamation point. He's going to put in any written effort into this.
Yeah. But I wrote here that Melfi is doing great work. This is Melfi in top form. This might be some of the best we've seen her. She's really getting the bottom of it. He asked for more of her. She's given it to him. She's in a place out of season 2 where she's actually prepared to do this for him, and it looks like, for the moment, this is good work being done. She says that, good work. So hopefully nothing happens that derails anything there. Then this scene where Tony is watching football with AJ. This is a real thing. I remember, when I played baseball, I'd watch baseball games with my dad, and we'd talk about what the plays were, what the umpires were doing, the rules, and you're supposed to watch sports when you're playing sports. So Tony's kind of talking him through it, and they're going to see Meadow at Columbia. Tony, another racist comment, Sambo, right? I pay for that goddamn college. And she kind of explains that Meadow is, it wouldn't be a good idea if Tony were to go along on this trip. He seems kind of hurt, stung by that. I was just looking out for her. I'll protecting her from herself. I'll do that till the day I die. And Carm, she's like, I'm not going to tell you can't go. She's your daughter, but this is probably not a good idea. And Tony takes the hint. Watch the game, picks up his chips, does the kind of woe is me thing, and
I'm a little surprised AJ wanted to go.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
Well,
I don't think you wanted to sit with Tony and watch football.
Right? Yeah. It's again more of that. I think for some reason Tony loving how much AJ plays football is not making AJ feel any better about it.
Yeah.
When the conversation at Columbia gets too much, AJ, like his dad, gets sent away. Why do I bother going anywhere?
Right. Yeah.
Of course the kid's lost. He doesn't know. It's like, go look at the kids out on the lawn and think about how you don't belong.
Mm-hmm.
And then I love this scene because it's uncomfortable. It's real to me. There's a lot of very good acting and writing in this scene. No surprise.
The dorm room scene?
The dorm room scene, yeah. Noah's there.
Noah's a sack of shit.
He sucks. I'm
sorry.
Yeah.
What kind of manners is that?
Yeah.
I
don't like the way he talks to Carmela. I laughed out loud when he said he's looking at him punch his fucking lights out, because that certainly wouldn't have gone well.
Yeah, which actually, it also dropped my intelligence estimate of Noah, because Noah seems like a really intelligent kid, like a show-off about it.
Yeah.
You didn't do 2 seconds of research on who Meadow's dad is?
Yeah.
You're going to punch Tony Soprano?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good luck with that.
Yeah, and again, this is what I love about The Sopranos.
What I'm saying is, he can be upset.
Yeah.
Tony was racist and horrible to him. Tony should apologize, and it should actually be up to Noah whether he wants anything to do with this family anymore, whether he's dating the daughter or not.
Correct.
But also, there's a line, right? The mom has come to visit. Can I talk to my daughter alone for a second? Only if Meadow gives me fucking proof. Fuck you. Get the fuck out of the dorm room.
Yeah.
Cocksucker.
Well, it's such a tricky situation, and I think Carmela, though, doesn't handle it 100% well as far as getting Meadow to kind of meet her anywhere in the middle here. And Carmela kind of wisely bows out at the end and says, you know what, anything I say is just going to fuel this. I think that's the best move for her at that point, given where everything is. But look, Meadow was looking for a big drama here.
Sure was.
And Noah was unfairly victimized by Tony's attitudes and the things he said.
Absolutely.
But
also, they don't make anything simple here. This is somebody who's not, if he weren't racially attacked by Tony, he would be a completely unsympathetic character.
Correct.
Yeah.
This is why you can't give idealists an inch, because they'll make you do fucking therapy forever about your privilege or whatever it is. This scene, in a weird way, made me more frustrated with Tony, in spite of the fact that he's going through various things. He can pout, as you say, and as Carmela, as it turns out, very wisely told him to stay home, he can sit there and watch the football game, and Carmela has to get all the misdirected, righteous anger from these annoying 18-year-olds. So the scene is fascinating to watch, but in that way, it was frustrating for me to watch, because Carmela can't get anywhere. She knows it's actually untenable, which is why she doesn't even really try to defend Tony. I think she tries to keep a space for him, right? He's coming from a place and time. She just gets more shit from Meadow. Meadow is out for blood, which also made me frustrated, because as the dynamic that Artie points out is one where we gave the kids too good a home life. So Meadow wants to shit on the culture that Carmela married into, but I've been craving that braciole, so I need like a free delivery. I was like, what's going on here?
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I feel for, in a weird way, I felt most for Carmela, just trying to, what she's actually doing is trying to referee a fight between her husband and her daughter.
Yes.
It feels much more like trying to referee something between two of her kids.
Yeah. There's also a card that Carmela doesn't play in this scene, which is that once Noah is gone. I wonder why she doesn't bring this up. Surely it must have occurred to Meadow at some point. Meadow, if you get this guy in real trouble with your father will kill him, right? Or something.
Yeah.
Right? Some actual real damage can be done to his actual person.
Yeah.
Right? His body. Maybe that doesn't factor. Maybe Meadow knows that's a line too far. I don't know. I don't know why she feels safe to give it to Tony in this way. Right? Do you know what I mean? She knows exactly who her father is and what his business is. And yeah, Tony's being a racist asshole and he's 100% dead wrong with the whole Noah situation, but this is not... I would not throw this guy in his face this way, because it's going to hurt this guy, not Meadow.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think Noah's being used as a pawn, I guess is what I'm coming to, by Meadow.
That's a great
point. He's the surrogate war she's having with her parents for how she was raised and the position she finds herself in. Noah matters even less than he probably realizes, Yeah.
He's not just a mixed race kid, as it turns out. He's his family is much more connected than the Soprano family to what I'd call the professional management class.
Right, he's quite wealthy, right?
And they have friends who work at... Meadow's going to hang out with people from NBC.
Yeah.
You stay within the family.
Yeah.
She's going outside HBO to hang out with NBC people. Unacceptable.
That's right.
So, yeah, then we get this... I like that. I like that analysis very much, guys. I have nothing more to add to that. But we had a very interesting little cut here of AJ waiting outside the dorm.
Yeah.
I like that they took this little beat. He's kind of looking at the kind of people who go to an Ivy League school like that, and it's a broad international...
Multicultural international group, yep.
I couldn't... And he's very clearly put off by it. He just doesn't see himself there. He doesn't feel like he like he says, calls them freaks later on. Yeah, I agree. It's like... I feel for him. He has, like you said, he's having like a crisis of what is my place? Where is my life going? What am I doing?
It's not that this is uncommon to young men his age and what they go through, but he's a young man in extraordinary circumstances, right? He's a young man who's a part of this family.
Yeah.
And finding his place in this family. And we've talked about this many, many times on this show. The role of the son, being the only son. And that is what this episode is about, right? It's about being a son, about being an heir, finding your way, and how you will bring up the next generation.
Mm-hmm. Things are starting to wrap up here. We get this scene where Janice comes back to fully move in, and she does such a shitty, transparent job of faking innocent. We meet the famous Bill.
Nice guy.
He is a nice guy. Svetlana comes in. I didn't think you'd have the nerve to show your face to me. And Janice is like, what's wrong? What do you mean? Just being such a twat waffle, to use an eloquent phrase. And then she drops this whole, wow, so if you draw some kind of karmic connection between your leg being missing and the records being returned to their proper owner, wow, I can see how you got there. But classic Janice at this point, that this is vintage Janice manipulation, being at the same time, just we talked at length last season about how Janice is very transparent in the way she's manipulative. It's not like she's being manipulative in an effective way, but yet she's still also able to get under people's skin with it too. So it's unbelievable. But Irina offers a warning, if I may say. This cunt is going to be sorry she ever fucked with me. And Janice throws out a last little comment about the locksmith, smugly shuts the door behind her. And that's it for this for now. We'll see what happens. But, oh boy, you can only imagine. Then we get this robbery. Chris is really desperate. He goes back to, Jackie, can we do this without Dino? Jackie's like, it's my fucking idea. They rob this benefit concert for Jewel. Jewel is doing a benefit concert.
You know this is a benefit concert, right?
Is that all there is? I'll blow your head off. They're wearing the Scream masks. A lot of students put it on their cards, so they don't have as much cash, maybe. I don't know. I guess there was a universe where it was possible this robbery went off without a gunshot being given, but all in all, successful robbery. Jackie's nervous. He pisses himself in the car. Chris goes in, robs. A little casting note, by the way, for the observant. The guy handing over the cash who says the line, "You realize you're robbing a benefit concert," is actually Perez Hilton.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so take a second look back if you didn't notice that.
By the way, I think this is about as far as Jackie's going to get at Rutgers.
Yes. That's a great point. And I like how Chris handles it. Don't move this car. Your life will not be worth shit. He gets scared. You worry for a second. Is he panicking? Is he going to hit the gas? But he pisses himself, but he hung in there, which is what he tells Paulie in the next scene. But Chris makes it right. He's exhausted. He's burned out. He got the $2,000 though. That's ultimately what matters. He meets Paulie, hands him his envelope, and Paulie kind of lets him in on the big secret, which is, he says earlier in the episode, all our concerns boil down to one. You just got to kick it upstairs. On it goes this thing of ours, but it's actually much more complicated than he was originally led on. Paulie says, "What'd you think? Welcome to the NFL, rookie." A nice father-son moment. Chris learns the lesson, but he had to compromise himself to do it. He had to compromise his direct order from Tony and get Jackie involved because he was just that desperate. There's only so many stoners and drug addicts on the street you can beat up before you take whatever you can get your hands on.
Yeah.
So, in the end, you got to kick up that envelope. We get the sense that Chris is probably going to be fine in this, but he's off to a rough start here. I love this cut when Paulie and Tony are talking about it in Vesuvio, and Paulie's like, "Yeah, cut him some slack." And Tony's mad. He gives him a call. So the phone's ringing, the beeper's going off, and that shot of Chris just rolling over with all the blankets, sandwiching his head between the pillows is just very funny.
Yeah.
And
when's he gonna grow up?
Yeah, right.
Cut to AJ on the field.
Yeah, AJ is on the field, and he's being praised by the coach. This man may have a great future ahead of him. He may be a leader, and passes out. What do we make of this? Not a good feeling. I'll tell you that. It doesn't feel good.
Certainly not. It's a stunning ending. There's, I think, a bit of, I thought, deliberate irony, Livia-esque, that for that moment, a lot of kids would take their helmet off. He has his helmet on, which is a good thing, because his head goes right into the steel of that tackle bot. That's a Livia thing, I think, with the seatbelts.
Right.
And, yeah, it brings the imagery full circle. It leaves it in a very tense place. There's no, he is just, presumably, had a panic attack, lost consciousness, and they're trying to wake him up. Mm-hmm. And that's it. It cuts out. Great. Dan Hicks and the Hot Licks tune, Where's the Money? Where's the Money? That plays us out.
Yep. So, yeah, that's it. That's Fortunate Son in a nutshell. I thought it was a great, not to denigrate the first 2 episodes at all by saying this, but this is kind of a return to form. We're back in it. Season 3 is cooking. Great Chris episode, great AJ episode. You're left feeling kind of uneasy about this. We get this great connection with Meat, but everything is left dangling. Very little resolves here. We're kind of like, this is one that ends you really want the next week to fly by so you can watch the next episode. I know I ended it just dying for the next one, which is an episode 4, Employee of the Month, which we're going to cover next, but, and then you watch that episode and you never want to watch anything else again. But very good, and I don't know. This was a home run for me. It hit all the points I wanted it to hit. Got new characters. Our stories are moving. We're having fun. Any final thoughts on Fortunate Son?
Yeah, so the title of the episode's actual title, Fortunate Son, of course, I think probably reminds anybody of the Creedence song, Fortunate Son, which is a song about not being the fortunate son, right? That is what Fortunate Son is about.
It ain't me, ain't me.
Very ironically, that song is always played on, the 4th of July or Memorial Day, but, it's the least patriotic song that you could possibly think of, right? Because it talks about the great inequity in America and privilege of birth and things like that. But that is what this episode deals with. The question is, well, who is the fortunate son of these men? Certainly not Tony, not Jackie Jr., not AJ, not Christopher. So I guess it actually lines up exactly with the Creedence song. None of them are the fortunate sons. So who is? Just an interesting thought.
Very. I think, and the only other thing that I could make a connection to, I mean, certainly with Fortunate Son, I make the connection, I guess, to, as you said, the great inequity and questions about patriotism and, I guess, jingoism. Some folks are made to wave the flag.
Right.
Right? But fortunate also refers to fortune and what these guys are chasing. The bottom line is money. Right? And so... And what are you going to do in order to be fortunate? You rob a benefit concert. So some of it is the depths that we go to in this world, and what it really is to be a gangster. Sometimes it's not pretty, as we discussed right from the opening, and what it actually is to be made. A lot of responsibility, and sometimes it just sucks. Sometimes it's the grind, like everything else. I don't know. A lot of important insights in this episode. A lot of dramatic stuff. A lot of good laughs.
Well said, gentlemen. And with that, this has been another episode of the Sopranos podcast. I'm Chris D'Amato.
I'm Paul Mancini.
And I'm Jordan Hugh.
And we will be back for Employee of the Month. Get yourselves ready. That's a top fiver for me. So I can't wait to talk about it with you all. Enjoy your time. Have a great day.